And he says, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees. And he's basically saying, look at all these upright religious people that look like their lives are all perfect and everything is restored in their relationship. And then he says, you're not even going to surpass them. But then he tells us as well, not even their righteousness is good enough, because it can't actually bring restoration fully. And so this idea of righteousness then is something that we cannot muster in our own power and our own strength. But the reason Jesus says you will be satisfied when you hunger and thirst for righteousness is because who is the righteous one? Jesus. Who is the one who is restoring all relationships? Jesus. And so when we come to this desperate need of longing, like, I just want all these things to be restored and made right, he says, guess what? If you're going to hunger and thirst for those things, you're going to be satisfied. Why? Because the restorer, the righteous one, is here. And I'm here to bring my kingdom. And so this is where we come before this passage and we sort of humble ourselves before it. Where we come to this idea of, first of all, we don't hunger and thirst for righteousness, right? We hunger and thirst for all these selfish things that are going to fulfill us, which cause unrighteousness. So we humble ourselves before God and we say, the only way my thirst and hunger for righteousness is going to be satisfied is when I know and experience and trust Jesus, the only righteous one. The only righteous one. See, this is the beauty of what Jesus is offering. He's saying, I am going to fulfill that desire for righteousness that you have. It says, they long to see the kingdom of God come in every relationship. Here's key. And they know that only Jesus can bring it. That only Jesus can bring the restoration and healing to every relationship that we long for, that we desire, and that we so desperately need. And that's why Jesus says they're going to be satisfied. In other passages, Jesus says, if anyone's thirsty, what does Jesus say? Let him come to me, and I'm going to quench that thirst. He says, I am the bread of life. Everything you hunger for in life, only I can satisfy. The bread of life is what quenches that thirst and that hunger. That's the beauty of the nature of Jesus. And so my prayer for us tonight, as we contemplate and wrestle with this beatitude, is that first we just need to come to a posture of what's called confession. That we say, like, what we actually hunger and thirst for in this life isn't bringing human flourishing and wholeness. So often our selfishness is actually causing destruction around us. And recognizing that these four major categories of relationship that all have some aspect of brokenness and flaw with them, our only hope to bring restoration and healing to those things is through Jesus. But here's what's wild. He says, you will be satisfied here and now. When we bring Jesus into our life, he brings that healing here and now. But he also ties it sort of with last week. Blessed are the meek, for they shall what? They shall inherit the earth. And we talked about how last week that makes no sense. Meek people get taken advantage of. Meek people get pushed over. Meek people get pushed down. And yet Jesus says meek people will be elevated to ruling and reigning. Why? Because the kingdom of God is coming for those people. And now pair that picture of meekness with hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Jesus is telling that one day, the hunger you have for all things to be restored will come into full fruition What we taste here and now through Jesus is just a glimpse of what is promised for eternity, when every single relationship will be restored. All four categories: our relationship with God, our relationship with others, our relationship with self, and our relationship with creation. That is what it means to be satisfied in our longing and hunger and thirst for righteousness.